All right, you guys, today I'm realizing every time I start one of these videos, I'm like, all right, you guys, today I have to figure out a new intro. Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. Today we are going to talk about intelligence theories. Um, and those theories are kind of broken down by the psychologists who created them. And when we talk about theories of intelligence, right, we're thinking about how do psychologists approach what it means to be intelligent? And is there just one type of being smart? Is it fluid? Is it stagnant? Is it crystallized? Does it stay the same over time? What does IQ have to do with that? Does creativity count as being intelligent? Right? All of these things are going to play in as we just do a quick intro to these different theories. You will need to be able to distinguish between them. I'm going to go pretty quickly through them because they are similarly to Piaget's stages and Kohlberg stages and Erikson. Can't forget Erikson. They're pretty straightforward, and if you need to get more information, you can hop in the book or do a little bit more digging on your own. But we're just going to go through kind of a basic overview of these specific kind of intelligence theories. So with that, textbook terms we're going to talk intelligence, intelligence testing, general intelligence, factor analysis, savant syndrome, creativity, and emotional intelligence. This is all leading us into a documentary that you are going to watch today called The Brain Man. Battle of the Brains. What are we watching today? Battle of the Brains, for sure. Okay, we're watching Battle of the Brains, which shows basically a group of people all from different professions and kind of test them in a bunch of different ways in order to kind of gauge who's the most intelligent, quote unquote intelligent. And so that's going to be kind of our jumping off point to talk about intelligence testing, which we will start tomorrow. So with that, we did this in class. It is linked on the Canvas page. If you are watching this because you missed the Zoom meeting, feel free to hop on that intro page or onto the slide deck and the agenda slide deck, and you should be able to access this introduction activity that looks at kind of Sternberg and Gardner's approaches to intelligence. The first one, this is not a good picture. Okay, there we go. You can read all of those. So Sternberg's intelligence triarchy is the first theory of intelligence that we are going to look at. This was created in the late 1940s, or the late 1900s. Obviously, he was born. I'm reading this. Dumb Sarah. He was born in 1949, so this came about probably in the 70s. And he proposed that success in life is related to three types of abilities. And these three types of abilities are practical intelligence, analytical intelligence, and creative intelligence. So according to Sternberg, yes, creativity is a part of our overall intelligence, right? Practical intelligence is expertise and talent that helps to complete the tasks and manage the complex challenges of everyday life. Analytic intelligence, solving a well-defined problem with a single answer. And creative intelligence is generating new ideas to help adapt to novel situations. So really this is street smarts, book smarts, and creativity, right? That's how I think of them, right? Practical intelligence is really that street smarts. Can we go about and complete tasks in our everyday life, solve problems, big picture. Analytical is more book smart. Are you sitting down and able to find a single solution for a calculus problem, right? And creative intelligence is kind of broader, right? That could be artistic, but in this sense, right, we're really talking about this idea of being able to come up with novel ideas, creative, unique ideas. And when we break down actually some of these components of creativity when we're talking about it, right, I always want to be very clear in the fact that creativity does not equal artistic ability, right? Creativity equates more to novel thought. Be very clear on that, even when you're in all your other classes and you're I'm not creative because you can't draw anything more than a stick figure. We're all with you. Most of us are with you. That does not mean you're not creative. But within creative intelligence, there are 5 components to creativity that give us better insight to what he's referring to. So the first one is expertise. And this is kind of the building blocks we use in order to build new ideas. We're going to use a building block analogy here. So these are kind of the basic understandings and our ability to actually successfully do whatever it is we're trying to solve, right? Like, I probably couldn't hop into like my husband's field of medical devices and just like solve a problem, no matter how creative I am, right? You have to have some form of expertise. You have to have kind of those building blocks and that basic fundamental understanding of the idea before we can build new ones. Second one is imagination, right? This is referring to the ability to see new ways that the blocks could fit together. So imagination, kind of taking the problem apart and reworking it in your own way, coming up with your own ideas. Venturesome personality is the willingness to manipulate the blocks and try combinations that might not work, right? It's okay to take risks, right? That's that risk-taking, venturesome personality. It's okay to try something even if it doesn't work. Intrinsic motivation, the desire to build the blocks just because it's fun, even when no one is watching or suggesting it. That's, remember, thinking intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation when we talked about learning. Extrinsic is that, like, I want a raise, so I'm going to try and work really hard, whereas intrinsic is like, I really value a potential solution to this problem, so I'm going to work on it because it's important to me. All right, and the last one is a creative environment, or having a place you can play and build with the blocks as much as you want, with available help if you want it, right? So a lot of like businesses, I know my sister-in-law, Neil's sister, Camille, fun fact, Neil and his sister's older, goes Camille and Neil, and then their third brother's name is Charlie. So it's Camille, Neil, and Charlie. You can guess which one wasn't planned. I always make fun of him for that. Regardless, Camille works in San Francisco. She has worked at a few startup companies, but all these startup companies, right, are starting to create like creative workspaces instead of like offices, because it's a far more productive environment to get new ideas flowing, and that's that idea of a creative environment. So with that, then, we're going to shift and look at Howard Gardner's 8 intelligences. So like I said, I'm going to go through these ones pretty quick. These are the ones that you did the Gardner intro activity for, and you looked at like famous people who stood out for being proficient at each of these. But basically, right, we know that visual spatial is like artistic, being able to like paint and draw, right? That kind of idea. You have linguistic verbal, right? And that's the idea. Sorry, I'm trying to find the actual definitions here. Oh, the ability to use language well, sensitivity to the order of things. These people can argue, persuade, entertain, or instruct through spoken word. Interpersonal is the ability to understand people and relationships. These people can perceive and respond to moods, temperaments, intentions, and desires, whereas intrapersonal is the ability to understand or access emotional life as a means for understanding oneself and others. These people can easily access their own feelings and discriminate among different emotional states. So, right, interpersonal is being able to, like, I always think of interpersonal as like popular, and I don't love that word. Obviously, it's a dumb word, but like being able to like interact with and like get along with other people because you understand them and you understand the relationship there. Whereas intrapersonal is more about like understanding ourselves and our own emotions, right? Logical, mathematical. Generally, people say things like Albert Einstein, the ability to see the intelligence of numbers and logic. Musical, pretty self-explanatory. Bodily, kinesthetic, ability to use body skillfully and handle objects. That's like athletes, dancers, whatever it might be. And then naturalistic, again, relatively self-explanatory, but the ability to understand, categorize, and explain patterns encountered in the natural world. People observe, interpret, and construct a meaning from the natural world. So, yeah, farmers. Maybe it might be like a sociologist envisioning like big trends within society, whatever it might be. So these are Howard Gardner's 8 intelligences. So you have Sternberg, he has his 3, practical, analytical, and creative, and now we have Gardner's 8. that you're going to have to know. So we're going to look here now and talk just a little bit about prodigy versus savant syndrome. So savant syndrome is an actual psychological disorder, and it's very rare. It's marked by an island, what they call an island of brilliance in relationship to an intellectual disability. Oftentimes people who have savant syndrome generally have like severe autism, and they land pretty high on the autism spectrum, autism disorder spectrum, and they're very, very, very bright in one specific area. Generally intellectually disabled, but also display exceptional skill in a limited domain such as music, art, math, or calculating data. They oftentimes have obsessive fixations on particular topics, and memorization of trivia can also be present. So being obsessed with like trains or cars or whatever it might be, Legos. And that's kind of savant syndrome, and this is very rare, right? Prodigies are less rare, but these are people who have exceptional talents or powers that do not have an intellectual disability. So this is like, an example would be Bill Gates, right? Became the richest man in the United States at age 45. He began writing computer programs in 8th grade, dropped out of Harvard, created the first operating system, right? He's done some pretty incredible things, and he's very, very bright and like above and beyond what like a normal smart person would be. And so we refer to Bill Gates as a prodigy. Akrit Jaswal is also a prodigy, right? He doesn't have an intellectual disability. He's just like unbelievably talented, and he's 15 years old. He performed his first surgery at age 7. At 11, he became the youngest student ever admitted into an Indian university, and he has an IQ of 146, right? Another prodigy, Greg Cox. He speaks 64 languages. He learns about 5 per year, and he produced the world's largest language dictionary in 225 languages, which is crazy. And like, if you guys have ever seen The Rain Man, the movie, where he can like have a photographic memory, right? That would be an example of kind of like a prodigy, right? In order to be savant, you have to have some sort of psychological, mental disorder, right? An example of that is Daniel Tammet, and he's a high-functioning autistic 29-year-old, and he can remember numbers and languages. So you would argue, if we're talking Howard, right, and we're talking about that island of brilliance, probably linguistic verbal in his ability to like remember words and digits and numbers, which is crazy. That's like really a lot of numbers of pi. Fun fact, I can recite like 80 numbers of pi. Nadia is an autistic savant. She's an artist. This up here in the top, this is Nadia at age 4, and this is what Da Vinci was drawing, like as an adult, like a real artist, right? By age 2, she had autism. At 3.5, she began to draw, and she draws differently by putting in random details first and then outlining, right? Looking here, again, this is our typical 4-year-old drawing of a horse, right? Here's Nadia. Typical 4-year-old drawing. This would be me. This is not Nadia's here on the left. Brittany, sorry, I was going to say Stephanie. My thing was covered up. Brittany Meyer is a 16-year-old blind, autistic, and mentally disabled musical savant. She's memorized over 10,000 pieces, including hundreds of originals that she's written for herself. Again, the savant syndrome is very rare, and it needs to be tied to an intellectual disability, right? You can't just be a savant. We're going to watch this video because it is crazy what Stephen Wilshire can do. He can like fly in a helicopter over a skyline one time for like an hour and then go home and like draw the entire landscape or the entire skyline from memory. Again, he has autism, and this is an example of a savant, okay? So we'll watch this video. It's super cool.
I'm Stephen Wiltshire. I'm an artist. I'm in New York City. New York is my favorite city.
Stephen is an autistic artistic savant. I think drawing for Stephen is like air and water for us. He cannot live without it. I'm Stephen's sister. I'm extremely proud of him.
I'm gonna do a drawing of New York City from the memory. I feel excited. It's a beautiful city. Lots of skyscrapers. My favorite's the Empire State Building. It's a brilliant building. It was so beautiful out there. Nice and sunny.
Every aspect of what he sees comes alive on paper.
So this morning I figured it out. We'll start with the Brooklyn, up to the Midtown Manhattan, all the way to Queens. Gonna start now.
I would love to be in his mind to actually see how he sees things. Stephen was mute until the age of 5, so drawing was a form of his speech. This was his language. He has a phenomenal memory and is able to memorize cityscapes, landscapes, how many windows, floors, chimneys. To watch the ink touch the paper, it's almost like fine embroidery. You can actually see it develop. I never get tired of it.
This is it, it's done now. So I feel happy and good. I'm very proud of my work.
It's purely Stephen's own determination that he is where he is today.
Do the best you can and never stop.
Crazy, right? Like crazy, crazy. And again, we're gonna watch Battle of the Brains here today to get an insight into like different types of intelligence. But again, just clarifying the difference between prodigy and savant here. The last thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at the remaining intelligence theories. And like I said, I'm just going to cruise through them really quickly. If you have questions or you want to dig a little deeper, the textbook does a really good job of giving further insight into these. But again, they're pretty straightforward, so I don't want to spend a lot of time just like reciting stuff that you have to memorize. So take a second and just based on your general gut, do your best to kind of try and figure out which is which. You know a couple of them I've talked about already, but let's give you a second to do it and then I'll show you the answers. Okay, so the first one, emotional intelligence actually does have 4 components, and you will have to know these, so make sure you're writing these down. I'm just going through them quickly because you can dig into them a little more in depth. But the 4 components of emotional intelligence, which involves the processing and managing of emotional components of these social situations, including one's own emotions, so being able to like understand, that's an inter and intrapersonal or inter and intrapersonal intelligence that Gardner with his 8 theories or 8 components of, oh my gosh, I can't speak. Rewind. Emotional intelligence involves processing and managing the emotional component of these social situations, including one's own emotions. That is exemplified in Gardner's 8 types of intelligence, specifically inter and intrapersonal. The 4 components, though, are going to be perceiving, understanding, managing, and using. Again, our 4 components are perceiving, understanding, managing, and using. Okay? So, emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, perceiving, understanding, managing, and using. These are the 4 components of being able to access that inter and intrapersonal intellect, in which we're involving the emotional components of social situations, okay? The next one here, Louis Thurstone actually clarified that there are 7 clusters of linked abilities. Thurston found, he did like a test essentially of like all these different overall intelligences, and he kind of started this thought process that intelligence isn't just one thing. He was kind of the first guy to dig into that idea, and he tested 56 different skill sets, and he found that they fell into 7 clusters. Right, those clusters were then kind of like honed in upon with Gardner and Sternberg, and then we'll look at Charles Spearman as well. But Louis Thurstone, 7 clusters. He again tested a lot of different skills, and he saw that like people who were good at all of these skills tended to have verbal comprehension, high verbal comprehension, or inductive reasoning, word fluency, spatial ability, memory, perceptual speed, numerical ability, right? So Louis Thurstone had the 7 clusters of ability. The next one then, creativity and intelligence, right? We know this one. We already looked at this one. This is the 5 components, right? If we think back, this is Sternberg, his triarchical approach to intelligence: practical, analytical, and creative. Creative intelligence looks at expertise, imagination, venturesome personality, intrinsic motivation, and creative environment, right? We already went over that one. So we'll cruise along here then to Charles Spearman, who coined the idea of general intelligence. And this is simplified by this idea of just G, right? And so this is general intelligence. Basically what he did is he put together a statistical kind of approach called factor analysis. This factor analysis of different skills, and found that people who did well in one area also did well in another. And he generally said, like, if you are relatively creative, you're generally also pretty good at math, and you're probably pretty good at writing too. So he saw kind of this correlation. While you're better at some things than others, generally there's an overall correlation between your ability and no matter which approach you're looking at, Sternberg, if you're looking at Thurston, or you're looking at Gardner, it doesn't really matter all that much, because you are generally going to rank higher or lower than somebody else across the board. And so that's what G stands for, and he did that through factor analysis, which is a statistical study on what that looks like. So with that, again, brief overview of kind of Charles Spearman here, a brief overview of Thurston and emotional intelligence. We already talked about creativity, right? If we're talking about how this fits, right? This is Sternberg. So just kind of keep that in mind. You have access to all of this. Dig a little deeper, and then I am also going to put together a kind of overview of all the different approaches to intelligence that I'll share with you guys. So now you're going to transition. You're going to watch Battle of the Brains. It's super interesting, looks at the different types of intelligence. It also gives us an introduction into intelligence testing, which we will look at tomorrow. So enjoy. Make sure you complete the viewing guide that goes along with it. If you have questions, feel free to reach out via email.